Hey guys, welcome back. In today's video, we are talking about how AMC are on the offense, Citadel dismissed, the hidden FTDs, and many more in this video. First, we're taking a look at this from Adam Aron. AMC is making news with our Go plan. After COVID and Hollywood strikes had us on our heels, we are finally playing on offense again, investing in initiatives that we expect will grow our bottom line, at a time when the overall box office looks like it will markedly grow. So this is on the news that AMC bets on premium screens as Hollywood slate boasts big blockbuster titles. So we've talked about this, how AMC is obviously making a improvement with their screens with one of their recent partnerships. We've discussed this in previous videos. And what we have seen with AMC and how their management are doing with some of their strategies is essentially we talked about factor of different strategies. Firstly, closing down inefficient movie theaters, in which they closed over 200 plus. They open up 60 plus new theaters, and it has actually already outperformed the ones that they've closed. And so when we talk about in terms of efficiency, in terms of optimizing, just how much money they're spending and how much money they are gaining, they're doing very well. And now we're seeing as essentially we are going to be getting more and more movies that will rake in, extremely big amounts of money that will attract a lot of viewers. And then the battle is obviously which cinemas are going to get the more viewers. And we talked about a lot of movies that's going to be coming out. And if AMC is able to create new locations, they're able to have better screens, better services, better food, and hopefully, obviously, if we are able to see them in terms of cutting down cost in certain areas and essentially just creating the incentive for people to come, then we're going to be seeing AMC doing extremely well in their fundamentals. And so with Adam Aron talking about this, I'm excited about the fundamentals for AMC just going into the next few quarters, because we're seeing how they really want to gain the market shares. They're really trying to, and they already are doing very well, but they just want even more. And that will be extremely good for the fundamentals of AMC. At the end of the day, what we want to see is, of course, AMC improving, AMC making tons of profits, paying off their debt, and that will be, what's very good for AMC. And that's exactly what they are doing. And now, I didn't want to cover this piece of news earlier, but when I saw this piece of news from Adam Aron, I think that this particular statement had, a very big correlation. What we can see is lots of make-believe and make non-believe in the wake of the tariff turbulence. Careful, as for myself, I do believe CEO Adam had a reason for telling the world he was buying many AMC shares by March 2025. And I also believe it was a benevolent reason. And so what we saw was that last year, Adam Aron made this tweet, and he said, I believe I remain AMC's largest retail investors. I own 722,000 AMC shares and will invest in 1.2 million more AMC shares within 26 months, many by March 2025. And so this is obviously what we're talking about and what he was talking about, and is where we are at. Now, pair this up with the news we just got, which remember that he just posted this. You can see April 1st, 2025, and or depending on where you are, of course. And this is what Adam Aron has posted. And so I do believe that he's already had a vision. He had an extremely long-term vision. And what we can see is that just essentially going down, when we see a long-term projection of AMC, is that it's going to be doing very, very well. And what we can see is that the fundamental news, when we take a look at these, is extremely positive for AMC. But when you take a look at the fundamental news for some hedge funds and institutions out there, it is not going well. So we've recently talked about how the company, which obviously accused Ken Griffin of market manipulation, now that the very company is entering the discovery phase of the Ken Griffin's motion to dismiss was denied, which was NWBO. And we talked about how this was a big step just for the retail investor space, because if we are able to get a lot of momentum on this, if we are able to finally penalize and expose these shorts of what they're doing, it's going to start a new wave for a plethora of companies, obviously, which will include the likes of AMC and GME. You can also see Mullen market manipulation lawsuit heading to discovery is getting more media attention than NWBO's. But why aren't there big articles in any of these mentioned? This is big news. Maybe I missed them. So if obviously any of you guys are seeing these news on any large platforms that are out there, feel free to comment down below. But like Chris and I said, and also myself as well, I haven't actually seen it being covered that much. But remember that these are big news, just like what we've seen with NWBO and what we're seeing with Mullen right now. This is just the retail. This is companies themselves, along with the retail investors, protecting themselves and attacking short sellers, attacking these institutions for using tactics and strategies that are not allowed to obviously profit and benefit from themselves. And there's a clear reason why it isn't getting the media attention it should be, because they don't want them to. Because if this is getting the attention, if people are realizing and more, because there are people out there who don't understand that the stock market in certain aspects is being manipulated by these guys. And if they do realize, obviously it will cause an uproar. Obviously that's what the short sellers don't want, and is why we're not seeing, of course, these articles, why we're not seeing that getting attention. And so as always, and when you see these things, and when you make sure that you obviously share it, it doesn't have to be this video. This is not me trying to advertise my videos, but when you, these tweets will always be in the description. So if you guys want to share these tweets, if you guys want to share obviously what is happening, let it be known that what the short sellers are doing, what they're getting exposed for, what the lawsuit is about, feel free to do so, because that's what it's all about. It's about letting everyone actually understand and see, you know, what is happening in this market. Now, furthermore, as we're seeing AMC improving, as we're seeing the short sellers being in these lawsuits and are of course failing, whether it's NWBO, whether it's Mullen, we're also seeing how they're trying to increase their short positions in GME as well. Plus 2,200 short volume for GME. And so as we are met obviously with GME doing what they're doing, we talked about how fundamentals is very important. It's why we started the video off with the AMC fundamentals. And what we can see is that GME is also in a position where they have extremely good fundamentals. And so when we are in these areas, we're going to be seeing the shorts increasing. The reason for that isn't because retails are suddenly thinking, oh wow, AMC and GME having good fundamentals, let me sell my share. No, but it's rather the shorts are realizing, oh wow, AMC and GME are having extremely good fundamentals. That's going to attract more buyers. That's going to boost the price. So now what I have to do is to try and manipulate and push the price down and give off the perspective that AMC and GME is bad. And it's why we're seeing these large 22% short volume increase. But at the end of the day, people who are invested in AMC, who are invested in GME, understand exactly what is going on. They understand the manipulation. And as always, none of this is ever financial advice, so do take out a second of soul. Make sure you do your own due diligence and research. But essentially, when you do your own due diligence, whether you're value investing, whether you are just looking for a good fundamentals, what we are seeing is the good fundamentals that's being shown in both AMC and GME. Obviously, both in different areas, like we talked about. AMC improving their market shares, improving their actual infrastructures and allowing it to grow. GME taking a different approach, having a large cash, obviously making a ton of interest. We saw how their revenue increased because of that, buying into Bitcoin. And so different factors, different areas, different routes, but at the end of the day are both showing very, very promising fundamentals. Now, you can see in the light of this, new GME failure to deliver, data is either missing, being hidden, or magically has no fails occurring on one of the most shorted and FTD stocks in the entire market. So what you can see for GME is plenty of days where we're not getting the data for GME. You can see the notional value is 000, no shares. There are days where we're only seeing 519, we're only seeing 2. But now ask yourself, is that possible? When we take a look at what we've just talked about, and now this is obviously very recent, but we've always known that AMC and GME is the stocks that are being targeted and shorted a ton. And so how are we able to get this amount of short volume, but yet 0 or 2, right? That there's clearly something that is going on. We know that AMC and GME have been on the FTD list for the longest amount of times, and now suddenly we're not seeing any GME FTDs. Clearly, that is not possible. And so this is what we talked about with how they're hiding this. Now, this won't be the first time that they're, of course, hidden FTDs. We've seen they do that with APE. We've seen them do that with AMC in the past. And of course, we've seen them do that with GME in the past. And right now, the very fact they're doing it again is obviously making me question what is happening. Are they worried? And when we take a look at what's going on, you have to understand is that this is something they've been doing in the past. And you can see what else they've been doing. Citadel was fined $1 million by FINRA for mishandling tens of billions of stockholders, but when compared to the sheer scale of affected transaction, the penalty appears insignificant. Even at the low end of 10 billion mishandled order, the fine equates to just $0.0001 per order, making it effectively meaningless as a deterrent. And so this is why they're doing this. This is why we talked about, firstly, it's almost impossible for there to be zero FTDs because we've seen how they've mishandled data. And remember, this is only one company and there are tons out there. And clearly they're doing it because even if they do get fined, it's meaningless, right? $1 million. Now, $1 million is obviously a lot of money. But when you compare it to a firm who are making billions of dollars in profit, it's clearly nothing. And again, just when we cut it down to how much it costs per order, is 0.001. And so that's why we're seeing the zero data. That's why they are willing to hide it, because if they don't hide the data, it'll be more damage to them than if they do. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys next time.